It was an old factory in the middle of nowhere, long abandoned, but still standing. In the past, it had been filled with workers, but now nothing ran through it besides the occasional wildlife. One July night in 1949, though, 4 teenagers decided it would be a good place to explore. The entrance to the factory was a large, old-fashioned looking wooden door that was locked tightly shut. The teens looked around for another way in, but couldn't find one. What they did find, though, was an old iron lockbox. After some effort, they managed to get the box open and found a ring of 12 old rusted steel keys sitting inside. Would these old keys open the wooden door? Would they find something inside that would make their night of breaking and entering worth it? If only they knew that by unlocking the door, all they would find was true horror, because they had just found SCP-004, better known as the 12 Keys and the Door. Not long after, the local sheriff received a call from 3 of the panicked teens. They explained that while trying to get into the factory, one of their friends had gone missing. The local authorities were quickly deployed, taking the 3 teens into custody and beginning a full search of the factory grounds. The searching sheriff's department officers did eventually manage to find a clue as to what happened to the missing teen, but it wasn't a good sign. It was their severed hand, and even more disturbing is that it wasn't discovered outside the factory. No, it was found over 8 kilometers away. Soon other body parts were also found, some as far as 32 kilometers away. But how could the parts of the dead teenager's body have been scattered so quickly and so far from each other? When the surviving teens were interrogated, they all repeated the same wild story. The now dead teen had taken one of the keys out of the old box they had found and used it to unlock the strange old-fashioned wooden door that led into the factory. They opened the door and stepped inside. And the moment they did, they were immediately torn into pieces that suddenly vanished. These were no ordinary keys, and this was no ordinary door. It was clear this was a job for the SCP Foundation. An SCP agent was deployed to the site to begin investigating this anomaly. After getting the keys from local authorities, the agent brought in a group of 12 D-Class personnel to test them, one for each key, and it soon became clear that there was one effect that was common. 10 of the keys seemed to cause an effect that was completely unsurvivable. Upon trying the key in the door, the test subject was immediately torn apart just like the unfortunate teenager. While one key caused the body parts to be scattered in the immediate vicinity, all the others seemed to vanish into thin air. But it was the other 2 keys that proved to be of even greater interest to the Foundation. Unlike with all the other tests, the D-Class using the key designated SCP-004-7 was able to enter the door and return completely unharmed. But the D-Class using SCP-004-12 was a different story. Physically, he returned unharmed, but he seemed barely able to stagger out of the room. He collapsed and then began trying to claw his eyes out in panic and terror. He was quickly restrained and interrogated, but he wasn't coherent enough to give the Foundation any idea of what lurked behind the door. The first D-Class to enter using SCP-004-7, the one who returned intact and sane, only said that it was a massive room inside, far bigger than the building appeared from the outside. It was determined that the use of this key was safe enough for further testing. The door was open again using the same key, and the Foundation researchers propped it open so that an armed team could go inside and hopefully come out. A brief exploration of the massive room showed some clear anomalous properties. Not only was the room impossible to measure and possibly limitless in size, it also seemed impossible to shine any light in the room beyond the entry, and the people inside were the only objects that could be felt or illuminated. Whatever this room was, it was keeping its secrets. It was clear the site needed to be locked down. All the initial witnesses who knew too much were terminated. The Foundation was a little more trigger-happy with terminations in the 40s, and the site was quickly locked down under the auspices of being dangerous due to unexploded ordinances. Fences were placed around the site so that there would be no more teenage explorations. The records are spotty and incomplete, but whatever happened behind those doors during the initial testing between 1949 and 1950, the Foundation decided it had learned enough. The space-time anomalies at play inside of SCP-004 were deemed too dangerous to explore further, and the site was sealed off with all testing suspended. Whatever was lurking behind those doors, it would keep its secrets, and the site seemed easy to secure and contain. But this was far from the end of SCP-004, and 50 years later, it made its presence known again. It was another July night, many decades after the unfortunate teenager first opened the doors to SCP-004. Only a few pieces of their body had been found, but suddenly the rest of the corpse appeared exactly where they had last been seen, outside the old wooden door. Even odder was the fact that even though the subject had died many years ago, their body was still fresh, as if they had been killed that same day, and this wouldn't be the only sudden reappearance. 2 days later, a second body missing parts appeared in front of the door. This was quickly identified as one of the original 12 test subjects who opened the door. Foundation scientists were once again sent to the site to explore the space-time anomalies, and it was becoming clear that what went inside the door didn't stay there. It seemed like it went somewhere that didn't exist on the same plane as our reality. And if it could be understood, it could be used. On March 21st, 1999, the Foundation began establishing a site inside of SCP-004, but not for testing or research purposes. Nuclear weapons around the world were proliferating fast, and evidence was mounting that World War III could happen soon. The Foundation needed a site that could survive anything, and the mysterious room opened by the rusted keys seemed like it could be their salvation. Supplies would go in the room and would be preserved there indefinitely, safe from even nuclear annihilation. But getting the site set up would pose its own challenges. Now dubbed Site 62, the facility was soon expanded to house certain SCPs as well, in addition to a supercomputer to house all Foundation data. This would make it another invaluable backup in the event of an end-of-the-world event that necessitated a reboot. The site was completed over the next year, during which time they added high-tech containment units that could hold even the most dangerous SCP specimens. Entering and exiting the facility seemed to pose a risk to those working on it, though. Time no longer behaved like it should, even when using the one safe key. People would spend weeks in the site, then exit claiming they had only been there a few days. It was highly unpredictable, and the Foundation determined that it would be better to eliminate this X factor. All personnel working at Site 62 would now live on site permanently, with their families being told that they had died in an accident. It was August 18, 2003, when the United States and Canada were hit with a massive power outage, knocking out power to many of the Northeast's biggest population centers. While the SCP Foundation has backups on every site, multiple generators failed, and it was 53 minutes before power could be restored. During that time, those inside the mysterious room were plunged into total darkness, and it soon became clear they weren't alone. In the darkened room, the personnel reported feeling that they were surrounded by people that shouldn't be there, and creatures that shouldn't exist. While they couldn't see anything and nothing touched them, they were adamant that something was lurking in the room, and likely had been for a very long time. It seemed the limited source of light may be the only thing keeping these entities, whatever they are, at bay. When testing had resumed on SCP-004 after the bodies had reappeared outside the door, the Foundation decided to start exploring the effects of SCP-004-12 as well. What about this key caused such psychological horror that the subjects would try to tear out their own eyes? This key seemed to drive them insane, and of the 16 subjects, only 4 were still alive for any length of time after their return. Most remained in a catatonic state, but one was given extensive therapy and regained the ability to communicate, which allowed him to give the Foundation their best picture yet of what lurked inside the room. While the D-Class personnel was still severely affected by his time in the room and suffered near-total amnesia, he did remember a few things. He remembered deep terror and memories being forced into his mind that made no sense, as if they were artificially implanted. And he remembered not being alone. He described a massive green being, large enough that he couldn't see where it began and where it ended. The Foundation didn't know what it was either, but what they did know for certain is that when 10 of these keys are used, the doors open to a dimension where the laws of physics are so different that it is completely unsurvivable. Studies are ongoing as to what makes this effect so fatal and if there is a way to survive it, but no answers have been found. And with only 3 bodies of victims recovered so far, there is little evidence. But one object found on site is of additional interest. Discovered roughly a year after the initial anomaly, in a manager's office on the factory grounds, SCP-004-14 seems to be a miniature version of the anomaly. It's a large box made out of wood, and it is the only other object opened by the one safe key, as well as 5 of the other keys that lead to death when used on the main door. And this box has unusual properties as well. It opens automatically, and much like SCP-004's room, it seems to be much larger on the inside than the outside. It is possible to come in and out safely, but once the box is locked again, it is a different story. Objects placed in the box don't seem to affect its weight, and when the box is closed and locked, they vanish completely. Unlike the main room, nothing that's gone inside and locked in has ever been recovered. This includes living beings. Few answers have been found out about where they go, and it's possible the box could be used to dispose of specimens deemed to be too dangerous. But with no answers about where they go and when they might come back, this may be too risky. Because SCP-004 is fixed in place, special containment procedures focus on making sure it stays that way. It is strictly forbidden to take any of the other keys through the door, for fear of losing them or causing it to react in an unpredictable way. If the site should be breached or anything contained in Site-62 manages to escape containment, the Foundation is ready to activate the on-site warhead. Only employees with Level 1 clearance can access the site, and only Level 4s and above can use the keys, with all knowing that any attempt to remove the keys from the site will result in immediate termination. For now, SCP-004 remains fenced off, with only select experiments continuing as the Foundation tries to unravel its mysteries. But whatever lurks behind that wooden door, it keeps its secrets well. Now for another location that doesn't obey the laws of physics. Check out SCP-354 The Red Pool, or watch SCP-823 Carnival of Horrors for another seemingly normal location with unexpected dangers.